What's up, honeybees? This is DJ DT back at you with a new episode of Snapshot Reviews. Episode 2 features Reachin, a new refutation of time and space by Digable Planets. Released in 1993 by Capitol Records, this group consists of 3 members: Butterfly, Ladybug Mecha, and Doodlebug. The album goes about 56 minutes and 39 seconds with 14 tracks. This is an alternative hip hop album, but you can also put it under the categories of jazz and funk. The album was produced entirely by Ishmael Butler, aka Butterfly, and 1/3 of Digable Planets. The recording engineering credits goes to Shane Faber and Mike Magini. There are no other features on this album, so you're just going to hear these 3 people entirely. So my experience with Digable Planets comes from the music video Rebirth of Slick Cool Like That, which kind of awakened my taste for jazz and a lot of hip hop and eventually funk and other types of music that I will review in the future. The inspiration for this album came mostly from Ishmael Butler, aka Butterfly, who said that he would just kind of go through his dad's records. It usually consisted of a lot of jazz musicians and funk musicians. Even the title itself derives from a essay by George Louis Bourgeois. I hope I said that right. Where it's basically the same title, A New Refutation of Time and Space. Also, Reachin is basically a play or a kind of homage to jazz musicians that will call their songs cooking or moaning or something like that. It usually involves an apostrophe at the end is what I mean. Overall, this is going to be a journey of an album. They talk about what they love, who they are, what they care about, and they establish a good world building throughout this entire album. They give out this cool nightclub spoken word theme that I actually enjoyed, and you'll kind of hear it between the interludes of the songs where they're kind of in this nightclub scene. And what's kind of fun too is that they kind of make fun of themselves at the very beginning. They're being introduced as Digable Planets in this nightclub, and the MC says they some weird people. They're some weird motherfuckers, but I love them. So here they are, and he introduces them, and I started cracking up because the main reason why I wanted to do a review of this album is because, one, I love it, and two, because me and my mom just happen to be joking about hip hop, especially alternative hip hop, and some of the tropes that goes on with alternative hip hop. And I was joking that basically if Digable Planets was in a kind of hip hop classroom, they would be in the back of the classroom as the weird kids, the weird hippie kids in the background. Like, they're really smart, but they don't give a crap about grades. They're just talking about, time and space and aliens. They probably would have liked anime, too. They probably would have secretly dug out the Pokemon cards during their lunch breaks or something like that. Or but sometimes they do kind of talk about those things in the album, just really crazy, cool, funky stuff or whatever. It's a very colorful album for sure, but this ended up being that joke alone ended up being the inspiration for this review. So I thank you guys for choosing it so I can make that joke. Anyways, so I'm going to talk about the things that I liked about this album and the things that I did not like about this album. First of all, what I liked about this album is that they were consistent all throughout. They established who they were, the world around them, what they loved, and what they care about. They kept it consistent all throughout. The overall theme from this album happens really to be just a homage of all what makes them Digable Planets. The music they listen to, the neighborhood they live in, the world around them, like I said before. And also they address the things that they would like to change or make better. It's a celebration of Afrocentrism and beauty, and I appreciate that. They want to share the love and they want to spread love. That's their whole thing. So the second thing I did like about this album was the spoken word tones. They are is smooth and rich in execution, and you'll hear that all throughout the album, especially with the kind of spoken word poetry driven tracks like La Femme Fatale or even Jimmy Diggin' Cats or some of the other songs. But you're gonna hear that spoken word tone in those rich and smooth executions. The third thing I liked about this album is that they didn't shy away from topics that they felt like were important, such as with, the poverty lines, the treatment of black people throughout America. And they also didn't shy away from topics of abortion. Those were some of the main things that they kind of got into. Um, they also envision a world and a brighter future, and they felt like through their music they could do that. So the fourth thing that I like was the samples are really good. You're gonna hear Herbie Hancock, you're gonna hear James Brown, you're gonna hear Jimi Hendrix, and you're gonna hear the Honey Dippers and 24 Karat Black, which is about the coolest motherfucking name you're gonna hear from a band. Freaking 24 Karat Black. I need that on a shirt right away. Which they were heavily sampled in Rebirth of Slick. The fifth thing I liked about this album were the rhymes were consistent and they were complex and charming. So this is a very lighthearted album, and you're gonna get a lot of just kind of really cool, fun vibes. You're gonna get that walking down the street corner vibes, just dapping hands with your homies, and coming off of work on a afternoon, and you just want to chill with your friends type vibes. You know what I'm saying? Just chit chatting. You're gonna feel that, and you're gonna feel immersed in their world. And that's because they do such a good job of keeping the theme together. Everyone bounced off each other really well, and all brought something very fun to each track. So those are the things that I liked about the album. The things that I didn't like about the album was that there wasn't a whole lot of variety. Now, like I said, the spoken word and the poetry and that kind of thing worked for this album, but that's also kind of to the detriment as well, is that the cadence were always the same. The members didn't have a individual style, and you could kind of tell who was running the show, which was Butterfly. And I don't know if that was ever really a problem for them. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But for me, stylistically, there wasn't a whole lot of variety. And usually there was Butterfly at the first verse, and then Through the Bug in the second, and then Ladybug at the last. And that's another thing that kind of bothered me, was that I didn't get more from Ladybug, especially since her voice stood out the most, and I would have liked her on tracks like La Femme Fatale, where she kind of could have given a woman's point of view on abortion and how she felt about that. The only time you'll hear her say something about that is What Is Really What, where she basically says, how am I supposed to relax if the Supreme Court is all in my uterus? Which I think that's probably a really cool freaking line, and I just would have loved to have heard that in a verse for La Femme Fatale, where she gives a woman's perspective. I'm not saying Butterfly did not give a very I'm not saying he didn't do a great job of talking about that topic, because he did it very respectfully, and he basically just said, hey, look, I'm on your side, ladies. I want you to be able to do what you want to do with your body without, a bunch of hypocrites telling you otherwise. And he did it in a very respectful manner, and I appreciate him for that. But I also would have liked it if Ladybug had have had a voice in that. That's all I'm saying. But that was my only complaints. And with that, I give the album a 4.5 out of 5. That tiny little thing was my only grievance with the album, so I wanted to give it a fair score. 4.5 out of 5 is what this is going to be the score for this album. It's just a beautiful homage to Afrocentrism, jazz, and the New York way of life. It's a love letter to all these things. It's fun, it's wild, it's trippy at times, and if you, it's kind of like if you stepped into an Ernie Barnes painting, and if you Ain't never seen a Ernie Barnes painting. Just think of the painting from Good Times. That's the type of painting I'm talking about. The album was praised well by critics and fans alike, and it is seen as a hip hop classic to this day. Also, I want to go into my favorite tracks from the album that I think you guys should check out. First of all, like I said, La Femme Fatale, Rebirth of Slick, Jimmy Diggin' Cats, which is literally dedicated to Jimi Hendrix, and he is sampled all throughout that song. Where I'm From, Pacifics, and Examination of What. And also, Nickel Bags. A nickel bag of funk. That is what you're going to get from this album. So I highly recommend that you check out this album. I also highly recommend that you check out the album that they put out 1 year later called Blowout Comb. This would have been their last album, and this is the most politically charged album, and it's a little more subdued. It's not as lighthearted as the first album is, but it is very much a classic and it's very underrated and underappreciated. So I ask you guys to check that one out as well while you're checking that one out as well. And that concludes my review of Reachin, a new refutation of time and space by Digable Planets. I want to thank you guys for joining me, DJ DT, with a snapshot review. And let's vote on the next one. Stay sweet, honeybees.